Hello everyone, it's Evie here, and today I'm going to be talking a bit about what went into writing my book, Deathly Nightshade. And we're coming up on the 1 year anniversary of it being published, and I'm excited about that. And I also finished rereading it so I could work on the sequel to the book and have a better idea of what I wanted to include in the book that I didn't want to include in the first one. So this is an exciting time for me, and I felt like I just wanted to share a bit about what went into writing this book I love. And so here it is, Deathly Nightshade. And you may notice that the painting right behind me is the cover art for her. And so the book is about, for any of you who haven't read it, it's about this girl. Her name is Isabella Casey, and she prefers to be called Belladonna, but I call her Bella, and I know 100% that she would hate me, absolutely hate me for it. But I call her Bella anyway, and I call that painting Bella more often than not. I just refer to the book as Bella. So Deathly Nightshade is this idea, because her nickname is Belladonna, and you see the plant Belladonna in the cover as well. Deathly Nightshade is a nickname for Belladonna. So that's one thing about it. But this book is about her. This is Bella's story about growing up in a time of war. So she's a psychic, and she goes to a school for developing psychics. And it's during this time where non-psychics and psychics are at war, because the non-psychics know that psychics exist in this society, and they don't like them for the most part. There are people who don't want psychics around. And so there's this big war that breaks out, and Bella is telling you her story about what it was like to grow up during that time of war and her part in it and stuff like that, about like how she handled it, how growing up during wartime affected her. And she tends to get herself into messes, and so she has to clean those up, and it's really her telling you her story, and I love every moment of it. So this is really different for me to write because Bella is talking directly to you, the reader, and that was a little bit challenging for me because I had never written a story like that before, in that format where the main character is talking to the reader. And it was a little bit of a challenge to write it that way. There were some parts where I didn't know exactly what direction to take it, and was really trying to find a way to bring it all together that made sense and felt good to me. But I absolutely loved it. Like, that's my favorite part of writing this book, was just that she gets to talk directly to you, and writing it was pretty cool, of just kind of like writing certain parts that I felt like, oh, a reader might think this about this particular part, and just like writing Bella's dialogue, to say, like, yeah, I know that you're probably thinking this, and this is how I'm addressing it. And that was a really fun thing for me to do. That was probably my favorite part, and it really helped me grow as an author, which was incredible because I love what I do, and to get better at it is awesome in my mind. I always like to improve my craft and what I'm doing. So to challenge myself in this way, and I know writing the sequel is going to be a challenge as well. It's exciting for me. And now I want to talk a bit about how I came up with the character, because Bella is quite a character of herself, and I it came to be because I was asked to play a Pokemon version of Dungeons and Dragons. So it was kind of like a role playing game where you have like your dungeon master, except it's not called that, the person who runs the campaign, and you have to kind of create your character and the backstory and all of that. And so I was asked to play this game, and I started creating my character. I like instantly knew I wanted her to be psychic. Like, I'm always interested in psychic stuff, so that was a big thing for me. And I started creating her backstory in character creation, and I practically had a book right then and there, just creating this character. And I loved her so much, and I loved her character, and I was excited to play as her during this game. But the game actually fell through. Other people who were supposed to play backed out, and so we didn't really get to run the campaign, which was a disappointment because I really wanted to be this character. I wanted to put her to good use. And so I decided to just write this book and use her character, use her backstory for the book itself. And I took out all the Pokemon aspects of the character creation, which I honestly hadn't put too much thought into the Pokemon itself for her backstory. So there wasn't much that I needed to work around in using this character from the game for my book. So yeah, I took out all the bits of Pokemon that were in there for the sake of the game and used the bulk of the character for the book. And I just find it so amusing that this is how I came up with her, how this whole story came to be, because somebody asked me to play a game and I got really invested in it. So that's one of my favorite parts about how this book came to be. Just inspiration can really strike anywhere, and that just goes to show you, like, always look for inspiration, and you can find it in the most unlikely of places. Um, and let's see, what else did I want to talk about with this? I think, there's a hidden message in the story. In writing the book, I wrote the first draft, and then I was reading it back and realized that there was kind of a message in here about how we tell stories. Because Bella is telling you this story directly, she's telling you her story. And I realized that it's a bit of a commentary on how we all tell stories, or at least a good chunk of us tell stories. I didn't set out to write this in that way where my intention was like, okay, I'm going to write a story that comments on how we all tell stories. It wasn't something that was on my mind. It was an afterthought. It was something that I realized upon editing and decided to include a few other things that would make this message kind of come across a bit more. Because a lot of times when we tell stories, we embellish a little bit, and sometimes we leave things out because they don't suit our needs when we're telling a story, depending on what point we're trying to get across. And so that was something that I really wanted to include in the book itself, because I just think it's so interesting, because I mean, books itself is storytelling, but we all tell stories. Like, I'm telling you a story now, recording this video. I'm telling you the story of how this story came to be. And I mean, I'm not like leaving anything out intentionally. I'm not like embellishing things all that much. But sometimes people do that, and I'm sure I've done that in the past in telling stories about different things, and it's just something that I find really fascinating. And another thing I realized about this book is that it is the first book I've written where I wasn't inspired by my personal experiences. In writing this book, I didn't include any of my personal experiences in this book. I mean, it's kind of crazy. If you've read it, it's a bit crazy to even think that any aspect of that book could have come from an experience that I had. Though you might say that about all of my books, but this is the first book where I didn't include any of my experiences. I like to include my spiritual experiences in my books. And that's what inspired me to become an author in the first place. But this is just a story for the sake of telling a story, and that was so fun to me. It was absolutely exciting to just be telling a story and not feel like, oh, I have to include my experiences. So that was interesting because I had never written a book before that didn't involve at least one of my spiritual experiences, and this one just doesn't have any of them. It was inspired by a game of all things, and so that makes it pretty special to me. Just to know that I can just pull these things out of my head and not. I don't always have to pull from my experiences, though I do enjoy that, and I'm sure I will continue to write that way in the future. But this book is very different from all of the others that I have written, and I enjoy that, and I'm enjoying that working on this series means that I'm going to continue to grow as an author. That's so exciting to me. So that's all that I really have to say about the book at the moment that I can think of. So I will leave a link in the description for anyone who is interested in checking out Deathly Nightshade. Again, no pressure, but I love this book so much, and I'm excited to share bits of it with you. And if you have any questions about the book, don't hesitate to ask, or about the writing process or anything, let me know, and I will see you all next time. Bye!